Hey guys, it's Curtis, and I'm back again with another Football Manager 2018 video, and this time I'm going to be showing you guys the top bargain Wonderkids that you should be looking out for. Now, these players are going to be ranging from about like 1 million to maybe 30 million pounds, so they're going to be for more the top division clubs in Europe specifically. So you're not going to get any like really cheap players like for lower division clubs. So just keep that in mind that this is, I'm taking these players from the top 200 best Wonderkids of Football Manager 2018, and I'm picking out the best ones that you can pick from them that are really cheap in terms of how good they turn out to be. So as I was researching these players and how much you can expect to pay for them at the beginning of your saves, the final release of the game came out and updated through Steam. So I had to redo another save and check the prices, and it turns out most of them stayed the exact same. So hopefully the transfer fees are accurate. I think they will be, but just keep in mind that the further you go into your save, the more these transfer fees are going to change compared to what I'm giving you here. I'm going to be going through this list from position to position, and I'm going to be going with the more expensive options and then working my way down to the more inexpensive options. But do keep in mind that even though some of these players are really cheap, they're still in the top 200 of best Wonderkids in Football Manager 2018. So they're still a really good deal for how good they are. But I will say, as you do your save, there's going to end up being regens that end up being better than these Wonderkids. So do keep that in mind, though. Even though they're top 200, they're just for the real players. Once as regens start getting into your save, they're going to start becoming better than these actual Wonderkids. So just keep that in mind. Some of these players will still be really good, though, even compared to a regen. Oh, and I will be using my simulated save that I simulated 10 years into the future that had every league and every player loaded just to try to get the most authentic results. But do keep in mind that these attributes and stats that you see on these players are going to vary drastically from save to save. But this will give you a good, like, just general idea of how they will turn out to be. And yep, that's what I'm going to be showing you guys and how they turned out, just to kind of see if you would consider that person worth it, and you be the judge on it, I guess. But for our first position, we're going to go to goalkeepers. Well, as you can see on the screen, there's only 2 bargain goalkeepers, or at least 2 that I would consider bargain goalkeepers. And before I even attempt this name, I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to butcher a lot of these names, so please excuse me on that. But for the first goalkeeper, we have Predrag Rajkovic, and he can be bought for about 13 million pounds. And he turns out really well, actually. For 13 million pounds, that's a solid investment for how well he turns out. He's really well-rounded. And, I mean, the rushing out's low, but you don't really need that too much, depending on how you want your goalkeeper to perform. But he's just really solid in all the areas you need him to be solid in as a goalkeeper. And just to kind of see his stats here, I mean, goalkeeper stats aren't that informative, honestly. It can really depend on like how good of a team you're on, but he's getting 7s and aboves, which is actually like most recent season with Dortmund was a 7.31. So he's actually performing really well. And look at all these shutouts. So he's good at keeping clean sheets. I would definitely say he's a worthy investment for sure. For 13 million pounds, definitely worth picking up. And then the next one is Augusto Batalla. And you can find him for about 7 million pounds at the beginning of a save. And once again, he turns out pretty well. Since we only have 2 goalkeepers, I'm going to compare the 2 of them and just kind of see how close they are in terms of attributes. But you can see his eccentricity is not that high, which is not that bad. Like if you're just using a goalkeeper, then that's fine. But if you want maybe like a sweeper keeper, then maybe you want to skip on this guy because rushing out's only at an 8. And let's look at his, okay, so he is on the lower end in terms of average rating, but I mean, that could just because of the team he's on. I wouldn't put too much weight into the stats of that. But in terms of his attributes, he looks really solid, especially for 7 million pounds. He may be, depending on if you're a top team, you may be wanting to use him as a backup, but even so, like that's a pretty good bargain for this good of a backup goalkeeper. But let's go ahead and compare these 2 players. So we've got Augusto and then Predrag. And, well, you can see Predrag is a much better player in almost every category except for the physical area. So if you're willing to spend a little bit more, 6 million more pounds, then I would definitely go for Rajkovic here on the right, as I think he could definitely be a starter for a lot of the top teams. As you can see, he's the starter for Dortmund. So if you do end up getting this guy, you know you've got a future star in your hands in terms of the goalkeeping position. But let's go ahead and head to our next list, which is going to be center backs. Okay, for our first player, we have Dan Axel Zagadil, and you can find him for about 20 million pounds. And he turns out pretty well. I mean, he's got the 15 marking, he's got 15 in tackling. The heading is only a 12, so that's a little bit low for a center back. But in terms of the mental area, he's decent as well. I mean, you don't really need off the ball or flair. Work rate is a little low, but I mean, if you can look past that, he's definitely a worthy investment. Physical area, he's definitely very good at. And just to kind of look at his stats, it looks like I guess he starts to save off in Dortmund, and then he stays there for a while and then ends up going to Bayern. And he just has a pretty decent average rating overall. I would definitely say this isn't the best bargain, but for 20 million pounds, it's not the worst, I guess I could say. So there will be better ones. So if you're not too interested in this guy, I will say that he's not the most well-rounded player. He's pretty much just only going to be used as a center back, I would say. I guess maybe you could play him as a fullback on the left side there, but for 20 million pounds, it might not be the best bargain you're looking for. So let's go ahead and get our next player. All right, for our next player, we have Kaglar Sayuncu, and he actually turns out really well, I have to say. He's also 20 million pounds, and I almost want to say he's better than Dan Axel, because look at this. He's got marking at 17, tackling at 17, and then also heading at 15. So the three big stats you need as a center back, and he's 15 or higher in each of those stats, or attributes, I should say. And then physically, he's amazing. Like really, really well in physical department, and then mentals. He doesn't have vision or off the ball or flair. So obviously the three most common things you need for an attacking player, he's not going to have, which is completely fine because he's a center back. So he's got all the ones you need, like determination at a 16, bravery at a 17. I love this guy. Yeah, 20 million pounds is a bit high, but I really like this guy. If you're on a bigger team that has the money to spend and you need a really good center back for the future, this is your guy. Let's go ahead and look at his stats real quick. Looks like Freiburg, he's at it for a little bit. PSG, he stays on for like a couple years, and then RBL, and then Liverpool he ends up going to. Just mediocre stats, I will say, mediocre rating, but I would say he's definitely still worth the investment. Now, our next player, I'm going to say, is the best bargain Wonderkid center back you can find, and that is Mathis De Licht. Oh my God, I love this guy. You can find him for 15 million pounds, and just look at how well-rounded he is in terms of the center back role. He's got 15 first touch, 16 heading, marking at a 16, passing at a 16, tackling at a 16, technique even at a 14. Like, what in the world? This guy can do it all. And for 15 million pounds, this guy is going to be a stud. You're going to want him on your team, because not only does his attributes reflect how good of a player is, but so does his average rating. Like, look at this. He starts out in Ajax and then goes to Chelsea. And look at those average ratings. He can perform. So if you're looking for a really good center back, that's probably going to be one of the best in terms of like in your save, what that is in a regen. This is the one that you're going to be wanting to pick up. For 15 million pounds, you're hard pressed to find a better deal than this. All right, for our next player, we have Diogo Queiroz, and he can be found for 15 million pounds as well. And he has a 17 marking, tackling at 16, heading at 14. So a pretty decent player. Mentals are a little bit low, I will say. Physicals are basically where you need them to be, so he looks good in that department. I did happen to notice that his average rating is a bit low, like to the point where one season he had a low average rating of 6.58. That's not that good. So I don't know how reflective this is of how good he can be for your team and your save. So just keep that in mind. You may be able to utilize him better than the AI managers have been able to. But in terms of attributes, I would say he's definitely a decent pickup for 15 million pounds. But just keep in mind that he may not be a performer. He might just have really good attributes, but lacking whenever it comes to actual game time. And in our next player, we have Christopher Eyre. And He's also for 15 million pounds, and I would say he's definitely pretty good. I love the mental area that he has. He's got determination of 17, leadership of 17. So this guy could be a future captain for your team, definitely. If you pick him up early and you keep him on keep him on your team for a lot of years to come, he could turn into like a captain type figure for your squad. And marking at 15, tackling at 14, heading at 12. So a bit lower on the heading, but I will say he could play as a midfielder if you want him to, and I would say he could be pretty fine in that role, especially like a defensive midfielder. You could definitely do that. So he's not like a full-on center back. You can move him around, but he's going to be in the center of the pitch here. And if you look at his ratings are about average, even sometimes in the 6s, but then picking up back up into the 7s. So not performing as well as like say a Mathis has been doing. But still a decent pickup for 15 million pounds, especially since he's a little bit more versatile than the other options that I've been showing you guys. But yeah, let's go into some cheaper options. And our first one is Juan Cruz Kumar. And I will say I really admire this guy. You can find him for 7 million pounds. And I love that basically he can only be a center back, because look at his stats or his attributes. He's low in everything except for the ones that you need him to be good at for a center back. Heading at a 17, marking at a 17, tackling 16, and then positioning at 16. So even the mental department, he's lacking, especially leadership. So he's not going to be a captain for your squad or anything like that. But physically, he's definitely pretty decent. Pace at 11 is a bit worrisome, but he is 30 years old, so that may have gone down just due to aging. Not too sure. 30 years old is still a little bit early to be losing pace, so I'm not too sure if that's the case or not. But let's see his average rating. Average rating, he's actually pretty good. Like he does play in a bit of easier divisions, but then he is in Portugal here in the last like 4 or 5 years, and he's performing pretty decently. So if you're looking for a cheaper option, 7 million pounds, he's not going to be able to do anything else other than be a center back for your team. But for 7 million pounds, I mean, something for the future. I like him a lot. Mentally, if you're looking for someone that's really good mentally, this is not your guy. I'm going to go and say it. But let's go and get our next player. And that's going to be Jorge. You can find him for 3.1 million pounds at the beginning of your saves. And you can see this is another player that really can't do anything other than be a center back. You probably immediately notice that the attributes aren't as good as some of the other options I've been showing you. But do keep in mind, this player is only 3.1 million pounds. So you get what you pay for, basically. I still like this guy a lot. I mean, he's got the role, he's got the attributes you need him in the role that he needs to fill for your team. So still a very worthy option, especially for only 3.1 million pounds. I would definitely say he's a worthy investment. Average rating is actually pretty good. He's been playing in Spain, and he's performing very well. So definitely a worthy option for only 3.1 million pounds. I mean, he could end up turning out even better than what these attributes show. Just keep that in mind. All these attributes and ratings, they can all be completely different in your saves. This is just kind of an idea of what this player could turn out to look like. And then next up, this is actually our last option for center back that I'm going to be showing on the video here, and that's Gabriel Bilotti. You can find him for a cheap 1 million pounds or even less, I think. And I mean, obviously, mentally, he's really low in some areas. Same for technically, he's really low in some areas. Physically, he's actually really, really good at. But marking 15, tackling 14, and then heading at a 15. So he's got the center back attributes you need. He's got even a positioning of 16, but good Lord, actually, man, some of these mentals are so low, it's actually insane. But for 1 million pounds, you can't really complain when you're only spending £1 million for somebody. And if you look at his average rating, they're a bit on the low side, I will say that. But just like I've said before, keep in mind, these are AI managers. They're not probably using him to his full capability. But yeah, I'd definitely say he's still worth a pickup, because he could turn out definitely a decent player. For just 1 million pounds, it's worth stashing on your team and maybe even loan him out and see how he does. I mean, to keep in mind, he's only 26 years old in this save, so he's a really, really young player at the beginning of Football Manager. Like, I'm guessing he's only 16 years old at the beginning of a save, considering I've simulated 10 years in advance. Okay, our next position is going to be fullbacks, and the first one we're going to look at is Gian Eyre. And as you can see, he turns out pretty well. You can find him for about 17 million pounds. And mentally, he's really well-rounded. Same for physical. And then technical, he's got all high attributes and the ones that you need him to be in terms of the role that he's doing. He could even play as an attacking midfielder on the left-hand side. So just keep that in mind, that he can be defensive and then also offensive on your team. I will say he's a little lacking in the technical department to be a really effective attacking player. So yeah, he's probably a little bit better on the defensive side of things. And then if we go to his history, he's actually performing really well. He stays on Wolfsburg basically almost his entire career, except for being at Frankfurt a little bit. But I'm loving it. Like, he did underperform a little bit in 2023, but for the most part, he's getting above sevens, and that's what you like to see, at least above sevens. And I would definitely say for £17 million, not a bad investment. Okay, our next player is Gere May Arana. And he's another left fullback, and you can find him for $17 million as well. And he's not quite as good, I would say, as the previous player we just looked at, but he's still pretty decent. He's more technically gifted, actually, in terms of, I guess, well-roundedness, in terms of going forward. So he can be a bit more attacking-minded. If you're looking for a more attacking-minded fullback, this guy could definitely fill that role. And if we look at the average rating, he doesn't perform quite as well, but I will say he has moved around a lot. Oh, good Lord, a 6.46. So I don't know. I mean, if you're looking for a more attacking-minded fullback, he's still pretty decent for £17 million. We're going to go and get the next player, and that's going to be Diogo Dalot, and he's a right fullback, and you can find him for about £10 million. And so he is a player that could be a little bit attacking-minded fullback, but I would say for the most part more defensive. And I really like this guy. He's well-rounded, just like our first fullback we looked at. And for £10 million, you really can't find too much better of a deal than that. And then if we look at average rating, he's once again a little lackluster. Is every fullback just not performing, or what's going on here? Because there's a lot of low average ratings for fullbacks. But if you can ignore these average ratings that you're seeing, it could just be the AI managers. I don't know what's going on, but for £10 million and these kind of attributes, you can expect him to perform a little bit better, I would say. But yeah, let's go and get our next player, and that's going to be Federico Demarco, and another left fullback. You can find him for £10 million. And basically almost every fullback you're going to find is going to be really well-rounded, because they kind of need to be. They need to be more like defensive, but then a little bit more attacking too, if you're looking to do overlap. And I will say the crossing at 15 is a definite plus. So this guy can definitely be a decent player to help out your attacks and getting the ball forward. And if we look at his average rating, once again, really low average rating. I don't know what to say. I guess fullbacks just don't perform that well in this version of the game. I don't know. Okay, and then our last fullback we're going to look at is Marlin, who is a left fullback. You can find him for about £3 million. And yeah, technically he's not the greatest player, but he definitely can be a decent option for you. Physically, he's definitely got that covered. And let me guess, his average rating is going to be low. Well, actually, when he was playing in Brazil, it was really high. And then once he came over to Europe, well, Portugal, he did pretty decent, and then it went down once he joined Schalke. So I don't know what's going on. I mean, 7.05 is not the worst, but you kind of would like someone to get a little bit better of an average rating. But I'm going to go ahead and say I think maybe the fullbacks just don't perform as in terms of average rating as highly as previous versions of the game. So just keep that in mind. Okay, our next position, and it's going to be midfielders. And the first one we're going to look at is Amadou Diawara. And I'm going to go ahead and say he's a bit pricey, but he's still a bargain because he's going to be one of the best defensive-minded midfielders that you can find. You can find him for about £35 million, which I know it's a bit pricey. So you're only going to be able to look for him in like a top club that has the money to be able to spend right off the bat like that. But as you can see, he's really strong in the midfield. Like a passing's as a 16, marking's at a 15, and then tackling's at a 15. So he's going to be really winning the ball back for your team in the midfield. And that's what I like. I really like a player like that on my team. And then physically, I love the physicals here. He's got everything you want. Like, he's going to be fast. He's going to be agile. He's very strong. He's going to be really good in your team. And then if we look at his average rating, he's definitely performing. Like he starts out in Napoli, I think, and then he goes to Barcelona, and then ends up going to Man City. So you look, Barcelona was able to sell him for £86 million. So yeah, you're going to be spending £35 million at the beginning of the game, but if you're able to develop him and he does eventually want to leave or you want to sell him, you could potentially make a pretty decent profit, and he's most likely going to perform pretty well for you as he's building up his attributes. So just keep that in mind, that it's like an investment that you'll eventually get your money back on. Okay, our next player is Atakin Akanak, I'm guessing. It's actually a really cool name if I only knew how to say it. But for £7 million, this guy is an absolute steal. Like, look at these mentals this guy has. Oh my lord. Vision 17, work rate 15, teamwork 17, positioning 14. So, okay, this guy can do it all. I'm telling you right now, if you have the £7 million and you need a good midfielder, pick up this guy at the beginning of your saves, because holy crap, he turns out really, really well. And I love the long shots at 15, so he can kind of score you just some random goals if you need him to. And then if you look at his average rating, it's not the highest, but it's still pretty decent. I did notice on Leverkusen, he did only play 3 games that season, but he had a shocking 5.93, which, come on, dude. Come on. But yeah, I would definitely say pick this guy up if you have the money. He's going to be a really good midfielder for the future. And let's go and get our next player. And that's going to be Filippo Melagoni. And this guy you can find for £7 million. And once again, I'm going to say this guy is an absolute bargain as well. Like, look, if you thought the last guy's mentals was good, this guy is even better. Because holy crap, look at if you see orange on my attribute page, that's good. Green is decent, white is not that good, and then gray is really bad. But the more orange you see, the better. And this guy has a lot of orange, so I like that. But let's go and go to his average rating, and I like it. He's getting over 7s. At Juventus, he didn't perform very well, so that's a bit of a concern. But once he joined Barcelona, oh my goodness, he's actually getting 13 assists a season. That is not bad at all. So, and he's even more defensive minded, I would say. Maybe not. He's kind of like a do it all in the midfield type of player. So keep that in mind. He could definitely help the attacking side of things as well, as it would appear in this save. Okay, and our next position is going to be attacking midfielders. And the first player we're going to go over is Pablo Fornals. And you can find him for £26.5 million. Now, this is not that big of a bargain, I will say, but he does turn out pretty well. Like passings at a 16, which is probably his most crucial stat as an attacking midfielder. So he can get the ball to your attacking players and hopefully set up an assisting goal score. And then the vision at a 17 to help find him the passes. So he's definitely going to be he's going to be trying the killer balls. And if you look at his average rating, it's pretty decent. Not the great. Actually, the assist is not as high. Like, not a single time did he get double-digit assists. But he is getting double-digit goals in some seasons, so it's a bit surprising, actually. So if you're a more rich club at the beginning of a season, you may want to pick this guy up. I will say he's not the biggest bargain, so I don't blame you if you don't want to pick him up. Okay, the next player we're going to be looking at is actually someone that's not on the list, and that's Martin Odegaard, and you can find him for about £18.25 million. Actually, I think that's his release clause, and I really like this guy because he's got really high attributes and the ones that you need him to be high in. He's going to be a purely attacking minded player. Like, with a tackling at 5 and a marking at 6, you're not going to be looking to have him do any defensive work. This is a pure attacking midfielder, so keep that in mind if you're going to be picking this guy up. Physically, he's a bit on the low side, like strength at a 9, so he's not going to be looking to push anybody over or anything, but he's going to be great at setting up goals, I assure you of that. And in terms of average rating, wow, he actually, okay, so he does play for like the reserves a lot, but he performs when he does, and he ends up joining Wolves on a free, which is kind of crazy. But I will admit, this guy's not the biggest bargain, but if you like an attacking-minded midfielder like this player, he's definitely a worthy option for a pickup. All right, and then our next player is going to be Lukas Potato. And this guy you can find for £8 million, and I'm going to say that's a really good bargain. Passings out of 16, you love to see that. Dribbling out of 16, first touch out of 17. I'm loving these orange stats that I'm seeing here. And then if you look at his average rating, oh my. Okay, so this guy actually performs. Holy crap. So even an AI manager can have this guy perform. And holy crap, he's getting double-digit goals and double-digit assists in the same seasons. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say for £8 million, this guy's a steal. Pick this guy up. It looks like he turns out to be an absolute stud. All right, and for our next player, we have Roland Soleil, maybe? I don't know. You can find him for £3.5 million. And yeah, I know he's not as high in the attribute department as the other players, but he's still pretty well-rounded, I would say. And he's definitely worth looking at. Now, if we look at his average rating, it's pretty average. I will say his average rating is pretty average. So £3.5 million. He's not going to be like the next like player of the year or anything like that, but he's definitely a decent option if you're looking for a cheaper attacking midfielder. All right, and for our last player, we have Felice D'Amiso, and you can find this guy for free. So you can just straight up right-click his name and approach the sign. I think you'll have to wait like a year, like next transfer window, for him to actually join your team. But if you're able to land that, as you can tell, it's an absolute steal because look how well he turns out for essentially free. And if we look at his average rating, he's actually performing at Dortmund. Like 1 season, actually 2 seasons, he's had 7.4. That is really good. So you can't complain. This is definitely a bargain. One of the best bargains that you can find for an attacking midfielder. Definitely pick this guy up. I mean, why not when you can just pick him up for free? All right, our next position is going to be wingers. And for our first player, we're going to be looking at Calvin Stangs. You can find him for £15 million, so not the cheapest of bargains. But in terms of attributes and how he turns out, I would say that's still a pretty good buy. So he ends up going to Real Madrid in this save. And if you look at his average rating, he's performing. Like he did have 1 season where he didn't perform that well, but all the others I would say are above average. So definitely keep your eye on this guy if you want to pick him up. And then our next player, we have Rafi Neo, and he can be found for £3 million. So definitely another cheap option. I'm loving the pace at 16, the technique at 16. I love this. Flair at an 18. So this guy's just all about doing the tricky stuff. All right, but let's see how he performs. It's pretty decent. I mean, it's a little bit above average, so I do like that. And do keep in mind, he's only £3 million, so you're not breaking the bank to buy this guy. Well, I guess it depends on what club you're on, but typically you're not going to be breaking the bank for this player, so definitely worth picking up, I would say. And then our next player, who can be bought for a cheap £1 million, is Ogun De Caro Etebo. So £1 million, and you can pick this guy up. And technically, I will say he's lacking just a little bit, but he's still very strong. I'm going to go ahead and say he's a pretty decent pickup for just £1 million. I mean, you can't really complain with that. And if we look at his average rating, you like to see that. There's not a single season where he went below 7, so that's very good. And then our last player that we're going to be looking at is for some reason not on this list, and that's Ryan Glover. And Ryan Glover can be picked up for free. You just can right click his name and approach the sign right off the beginning of a save, and you can pick this guy up. I think you do have to pay a compensation of close to £500,000, so do keep that in mind. But you can't really complain. Like, this guy could turn into an English superstar, and he even gets loaned out a crap ton and still turns out really well. And he ends up not even playing in the Premier League until like 2024. But he's not the most well-rounded player, but he's got really high attributes in the areas that needs him to be, especially the determination at a 20. That is amazing to see. All right, and our last position is going to be strikers. And the first player we're going to be looking at is, I'm going to say, the best striker that you can possibly buy that's still kind of cheap, and that's Moise Kean. He's still £35 million, so it's a bit pricey, but if you can just look at his attributes, he turns into an absolute stud. I mean, mentally, he's gifted in so many areas of the game. Same for physicals and same for technicals. I really like this guy. If you're a top-tier team and you're looking for a striker that's going to eventually turn into a star of your team, this is the man. If you look at his average rating, he performs pretty decently. He's getting, oh my God, he's getting over 20 goals a season. So he knows how to score goals. I would definitely pick this guy if you have £35 million and you're looking for a good striker. And then for our next player, we have Paulinho. This guy you can buy for £7 million, and I'm going to say that's excellent. Pick this guy up for £7 million. That is excellent. As you can see here, finishing 16, even long shots at a 16, penalty takings at a 16. So this guy just is all about scoring goals, and that's what you need for a striker. He's even got vision at a 17. I really like this guy a lot. And if we look at his average rating, he's kind of bounced around a bit, but he's consistently been playing very well. So £7 million, this guy's 100% worth it. All right, and then our next player, we have Kuki, who I was a big fan of in our last Football Manager 2017, and now I'm even a bigger fan in this one because you can find him for £5.25 million, which I think is his release clause, and I'm loving how well-rounded he is on the attacking side of the ball. And he's got so many high technicals, and then mentally he does lack in some areas, but then he's really strong in other areas. And then physically he's just like above average, I would say. So definitely for £5.25 million, an absolute steal. And in terms of average rating, he actually isn't performing the best on this particular save, but he's still able to be sold for in the 30 to 40 million pounds. So definitely an investment that can net you a ton of money if you end up selling him later on. And now our next player is Joel, who you can find for a cheap £2.8 million at the beginning of a save. And once again, this guy knows how to score goals. He's got 17 finishing, a penalty taking at 16. So if you need a good penalty taker, this is your guy. Long shots at a 13. Yeah, just a really decent striker. I mean, some of the mentals is a little low, but then he's still decently high and like off the ball at a 16. You love to see that for a striker. And then an average rating, wow, actually pretty good. Like once he leaves Everton and joins RBL, he starts cranking it up. I love that. All right, and then our last striker is going to be Walter. Where is he? Walter Gonzalez. Another RBL player. You can find him for £1 million. So not going to break the bank on this one, but I love this guy because if you need like a target man where he can head the ball in, this is your guy. This is the striker you want because heading at a 15 and then bravery at a 14 and then strength at a 14, he's going to be really good in the air. And for £1 million, that's great. Like you can just, even if you're in a top club, you can probably put him on your bench and then bring him on if you need to score a late goal or something. He's going to be really good at doing that. I guarantee it. And if you turn to his average rating, not the greatest, but look at this. In one season, he scored 23 goals for SLB. So it looks like if you're able to utilize him, at least in that year that the AI did, then he's going to turn out to be really well for you. Now, before I end the video, there is one honorable mention, and it's because of someone that appears like you could buy him, but then when you actually try to sign him, it says that he just recently signed a contract or something, so you're not actually able to pick him up, and that's Pietro Pellagra. He's listed as like £3 million at the beginning of the game, but you can't actually pick him up for that. But I would add him to your short list or something like that because you may be able to steal him for really cheap once your save is advancing in years. But if you're able to snag him for like 10 million or less, or maybe even a little bit more than that, I would say that's an absolute bargain. As you see, it's another decent striker that's in that can head the ball in, and then he's also got penalty taking, and I love the physicals and the mentals. And then if we go to his average rating, he performs insanely well. And Leverkusen were able to pick him up for 25 million, which I still think is a bargain. And then they were able to just sell him to Bayern Munich for 73 million. So just, I would say definitely keep an eye on this guy. You're not going to be able to actually buy him at the beginning of the game, but there's a decent chance you may be able to later in the save that you're playing in. But yeah, that's going to be the end of this video, guys. I will post the short list at the bottom of this video in the description. So if you're interested in downloading the short list for your save, I'll have it down there. But yeah, that's all for me, guys. I'll see you guys next time.